Frank. What's the weirdest thing you've ever saw in here?
Let me ask you a question, kid. Did you see that movie, Night of the Living Dead?
Hey, we gonna party tonight or what?
Yeah, we are gonna party.
Well, where are we gonna party?
I don't know, somewhere.
Hey, we could go to the park.
Oh, no, we can't. The cops said they'd shoot us if we go back to the park.
Yeah, and I ain't in no mood to go tonight.
I like death.
Greetings, ghouls, and welcome to minute 86 of Do You Want to Party, the Movies by Minute podcast for the 1985 groundbreaking horror classic, The Return of the Living Dead. I'm your host, Troy, and joining me today is a gentleman who was introduced in August of 1964 in The Amazing Spider-Man number 15.
I do not get that reference. Oh, Mitchell.
It's actually the first appearance of Kraven the Hunter, so...
Oh, cosplay reference. Okay, I follow. Okay,
I know I've already used the Kraven one, and I've also done our Watchmen reference. But I thought, let's do another Kraven one because that seems to be
because the only other one that we did group cosplays was not Cyclops, the Gambit for the Patrick Stewart photo.
Yes, exactly. Yes, yeah.
And I'm not brave as Channing Tatum to do a Nolan's accent, so I'm not going to be doing that.
Exactly. All right, so thank you, Mitch, for coming back to join me near the few wee minutes left of this podcast.
Always a pleasure, and rewatching the clip, I remember when I first watched the movie, and now I have problems. But we'll see.
Exactly. No, that's good, and I'm thinking the reason why I brought you in for this particular minute. So this particular minute is going to start with the sergeant's introduction, and ends with gazing skyward. All right. So a dark-skinned hand pulls up the white receiver of the hook from which it is sitting upon a desk. The young officer introduces himself and states his rank to the unheard voice on the other end of the receiver that he has brought to the side of his head.
Sergeant Jefferson, 42nd Special Mobile Artillery.
After a brief pause, his eyes widen with recognition of the person he's currently in conversation with, and instantly straightens up his posture as his military training kicks into service mode. He greets the voice on the other end of the line, pointing out the time of day.
Yes, sir. Good morning to you too, sir.
We can see that the sergeant is currently sealed in the forward operational center of the vehicle, of which he has a basic black-based keyboard with white keys before him, and to its side a silver box monitor. Splayed out beyond the keyboard is a yellow notepad and pencil, a few rolled up maps, and looking like it's just been recently deposited on top of these are the pages of a comic book depicting a military story. The window outside of the small containment unit that the sergeant is in shows a forested vista with a mountainous background beyond. To the officer's right-hand side sits a four-ringed binder that is a military codebook. After a brief listening pause, he suddenly reaches forward towards the yellow pad and yellow pencil and picks them up as well. Conversing with the voice on the other side, with pencil ready against the pad.
Yes, sir. All right, sir. Whatever you say, sir. The code numbers, please, sir.
He starts jotting down the code given to him, which he echoes to ensure preciseness of the process.
Archimedes-Hotdog-Rhubarb, Niner, 0, Niner. Gotcha, sir.
After finishing the task of writing down the codes, he gives a slightly lazical response and begins flipping through the pages of the previously mentioned ringed binder. Meanwhile, outside of the vehicle, we now see the entire scope of the vehicle that the officer is stationed in. A forward compartment that he is currently in is adorned with several satellites and receivers for communications.
I'm loving the image of the tank. Sorry, one sec.
Yes, no, go ahead.
I'm loving seeing the image of the tank because it seems so G.I. Joey. Because it feels like it's on rails, which they did do that, but it just it just makes me smile seeing it because I could see this being used as a transformer or something. It's something like kind of ridiculous because we're going to see a nuclear weapon is what's being armed. And at this time, they don't do that anymore. So it's just really, it's just makes me laugh, but also very scared.
What? I'll bring that up in a second, actually, as soon as we're done here.
Oh,
It is
sure.
no, that's quite all right. That's quite all right. That's why I have you on here. Like, if you want to say something, go right ahead. I always encourage that to happen.
Oh, I got things to say. No.
So it is adorned with several satellites, receivers, and reflectors for communication services. The room itself sits upon a train bed-like structure that stretches a distance behind the forward cabin. The main bulk of the train bed is occupied by a military-grade cannon. Everything about this vehicle is painted loosely and in general colors associated with camouflage. Sparse trees sit in the background on the other side of the train track of which the mobile weapon is sitting. We now hear a disembodied voice speaking out coordinates.
Bearing mark 220.
Back inside the cabin of the vehicle, the officer repeats the coordinates as his fingers punch into the keypad.
Bearing 220.
Outside, it activates the horizontal shifting of the giant weapon. The disembodied voice gives out another coordinate.
Range mark 134 miles.
To which, like before, the officer repeats to avoid any confusion as he punches in the latest numbers, raising the angle trajectory of the weapon.
Range 134 miles.
It slowly raises towards aiming at its new target. Inside, we witness an oversized, weaponized shell lifting up onto a receiving arm. The nuclear material warning sticker brazened on its copper shell. With animated motion, it slowly slides down the track to be locked into its final position. Then, a black screen, which briefly reflects the reverse image of the keyboard, suddenly flashes with the red block-lettered words of "locked." It flashes a few times, as well as a klaxon roaring somewhere nearby. After a brief ringing noise, outside we watch the raised cannon fire loudly and brightly into the distance. The forcefulness of its discharge jolting the entire vehicle to slide back upon its rolling wheels. With the overlaid sound of a whistle in the distance, we see Bert, still in the basement of the United Medical Warehouse, the back receiver of the rotary phone resting on his shoulder. In reaction to the sound, he looks up, looks off to the side. Turning towards the others unseen in the room around him, he questions with a little glimmer of hope stretching across his features.
Hey, listen. You hear anything?
Suddenly, the hidden ceiling access to the crawl space of the Resurrection Funeral Home's embalming room loudly slams open as the returning from the dead Freddy leaps forward. Tina, still cowering against Ernie, clutches at his arm. As behind him, Ernie is still pointing his ready-to-be-used weapon at the young woman's head. Everything freezes in an instant, and the hauntingly drawn-out, echoey voice of Freddy calls out his girlfriend's name. While the sound of the distant whistling grows stronger and louder. We then cut to a lineup of creatures. After the long night behind them, the sun is starting to light the sky behind the framing of the trees over the cemetery. The center character of these creatures is the familiar pale white flesh nakedness of the red-headed trash. Besides being reanimated corpses, the other thing that these monsters share in common is that they are staring skyward or to ascertain where the whistling sound continues to emanate from, and that is where we end this minute. All right. So, like I said, we are dealing with a very short little sequence and all that. What you had mentioned about it looking like a toy was perfect because, as you can clearly see, this is a miniature.
Well, I did assume it was a miniature.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it just looks like something Mattel would have not Mattel,
It
Hasbro would
it
have
would have been
created.
Hasbro. Yes, it would have been Hasbro would be
Yeah.
GI Joe at the time. Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
when you said GI Joe, I'm like, no, that is totally GI Joe. The only thing is, a lot of the GI Joe stuff didn't have like military coloring and all that sort
Hmm.
of thing. They usually were some sort of like, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, they would be kind of the replica gun stuff where they'll have
yeah.
very obvious colorings that
Hmm.
not to confuse it. But this
Yeah,
is a movie. They could just paint it whatever they like. I've
exactly,
done
exactly.
miniatures. You do whatever
Um,
you like.
I think it's unfortunate that the shot of the weapon itself looks like a diorama because of those trees sitting behind it. They look so barren and so
Hmm.
miniaturized, especially when we had an earlier shot inside the cabin of
Yeah.
the cab of the vehicle. We can actually see actual trees outside of
Yeah.
that, but it's kind of sad to see that. Yeah.
And also the when you see the miniature where the cab is and the angle
Hmm.
of the camera, you would
Yeah.
actually be looking into the tank, like the actual
Exactly.
machinery. You wouldn't see
Yes.
any unless it
Exactly.
was the inverse. So in that case, they should have flipped the picture earlier. That way,
More than
we're like
likely.
from
Yeah. Yeah.
within the tank, I guess.
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
the miniature version of it didn't like scream out. Like I figured it was a miniature. I don't think they had the budget to get a real tank, but or a missile launcher. Um, but it didn't bother me in that sense. It was just more the shape of it. It just looked like a actual transformer I had growing up. But obviously, which came first, the transformer or the military vehicle? But
Exactly. Yeah. And
the
again,
age-old question.
yeah, we're talking like the mid 80s. So
Yeah,
yeah, you have the toy references out there, which is more than likely this is probably pulled from some sort of
yeah,
kit that had a vehicle that they just bashed together a couple of little pieces to give it a little more oomph. I will
yeah,
say that the shot of it actually firing looked more impressive than
yeah,
the full shot of the whole entire thing because I
yeah.
think the scale looks more impressive when you look at the angle of the actual cannon itself, which again is a rudimentary like filming sort of
Mhm.
thing. You shoot the angle, you have a camera at a better angle to show off like more detail and all
Yeah.
that. Plus the nice little animated feature of
The loading of the
the
missile.
the loading of the missile, the giant oversized bullet as it actually really looks like
Yeah.
with its copper its copper casing and whatnot, which is interesting. I mean, I guess it makes kind of sense for the sort of cannon that they're about to fire. Yeah.
Y- Yeah. Like I'm trying my best to separate this is a horror movie about the dead coming out of a cemetery and eating people with a
Yeah.
dance sequence, versus what's going on in the world at that time. Because like
Exactly.
by this time the movie came out, they had the two key lock sequence to release missiles,
Yeah.
and like it is a good commentary if this came out in the 60s because like during the Korean conflict they wanted to use tactical nukes, but the president at the time was like, no, that's a terrible idea. But the military was very gun-ho and they wanted full control of it. But then we have like JFK coming back and saying, no, we need more layers of confirmation. We can't just fire nukes willy-nilly.
All right, so I'm so happy that you brought that up because if you think about that, this is a process that precedes that. This is something they set up knowing that this could be a result because, as
Yeah,
Bert had mentioned in the previous minute, that they had already had
yeah,
plans in line for something like this happening. So
yeah,
this is something that precedes what you just said because the event
yeah.
happened in the late 60s and then so this is obviously a system that was put into process from there and
Right.
just they never altered it and all that sort of thing. Everything
Yeah,
else about the military changed around it, but this one program, this
yeah.
searching out for these hidden, these lost Easter eggs, as they refer to them, it was has not processed. That's why we experience this one person, one button sort of. Makes sense?
I'm annoyed, but it makes sense. Like it
Yeah,
makes
I know
complete
it does,
sense.
doesn't it? And I'm so
It's
glad that you brought it up because it's
yeah,
kind of
no,
silly to like because the technology is so out of date with what,
yeah,
again, like you said perfectly,
it
in the 80s, it was a totally different system. That's not
yeah.
how the military went. But this is throwback technology that never evolved past its need for what it needs to do.
The
And
vehicle they use looks like it was for tactical nuclear weapons. Like
exactly,
it does
exactly.
look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I am very
The
annoyed.
fact that it's on a train track, it can be mobile to where it needs
Yeah.
to be. I mean, at a time when you didn't have the nuclear arsenal that the 80s ended up having for the US and
Yeah.
whatnot, which is yeah. So the other thing I also want to point out is the frozen shot of the our group of reanimated dead, all standing there looking skyward. If you look at the picture, and I'll post a an image of this to the social medias to coincide with this episode. If you look to the gentleman to the one side of trash, everyone's staring up in the sky, and this one guy has his hand over his
Yeah.
face to hide the glare of whatever he of looking up, and like I don't think that would probably been the proper thing for a creature like that to have done, sort of thing. I think he just like was caught in like a like oh, he just has his hand up there and whatnot. But
Even zombies know not to look directly at the sun. Like they
well,
got
technically,
this one.
technically, yeah, technically the light's coming up behind them. But anyways,
Yeah.
that being
Yeah, that
said,
is true.
yeah.
They got the
But he's
backlight.
doing more of a casual, like looking up to see if they can see. But I don't think.
Maybe he was a former soldier and he knows the sound and he's saluting it.
I do like that the this collection of creatures also is a nice assembly of what they have available to them as the reanimated corpses, because we do have a couple that are done up in really cool makeup. As we
Mhm.
can see, Linnea Quigley has this extra like facial and neck piece thrown on to give her more of a grotesque look, while the rest of
Yeah.
her body is again this super sleek and untouched white flesh.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
wondering if like, I was trying to remember if something happened during the movie that would have affected her neck or something because it looked very wrinkly
So
or gilly.
what I'm thinking is because of her ability to stretch out her mouth as wide as she does, it has
Mm.
actually affect the flesh around her neck. And
All right.
that's the only thing that I can think of, because technically she has the in this her facial makeup is the skull-like one where they basically highlight the brow
Yes.
and cheekbones. Whereas when she's doing the attack, she has that extra long prosthetic jaw hanging
Hmm.
out where you actually can see her actual chin in the middle of the open mouth from
Yeah.
previous in the movie. So I'm thinking that's the reasoning for that wrinkled flesh
Yeah, it makes
hanging below
sense.
her chin, which again, there is no explanation for that. It's just my guesses. That's why all of a sudden, yes,
It's good movie logic.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, yeah. But again, we also have like two of the other creatures in this collection also just have simple like basic grayish makeup on their faces,
Hmm.
whereas other guys have like a full facial piece. One guy actually looks like he's wearing a mask that is actually coming out of his collar and all that sort of thing. So sort of like as he looks
Yep.
up, his the mask looks like it's popped out of the collar as he's
Yep.
looking upwards and all that. So yeah.
I don't remember this. So I need your refresher. In the
Okay.
previous sequence, when we have
Yes.
Ernie in the attic,
Mm-hmm.
why is he pointing the gun at her?
Okay, so I think that he's basically going to mercy kill her. He doesn't want her
Yeah.
to have to go through the thing, so he was going to basically execute her.
Yeah.
So
It-
that's the only yeah.
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. He was
Okay.
basically doing it as a mercy killing, which is the only thing that I could think of. Obviously, he we don't see whether or not it comes
Yeah.
to that, but as we freeze in this particular moment in time, which also I think is kind of a neat little device to have like Freddy's voice echo throughout
Hmm.
like this shot and into the next shot, which is kind of makes it a nice little creepy thing. But more about that later on in the show. All right, so right now we're going to go to over on the commentary track where we're dealing with the writer and director Dan O'Bannon and the production designer William Stout. So William Stout starts off by talking about how this shot was made at Hazel's Crest. and adding how it was one of the very first things that they shot. Adding how he also had broken his rib the first day of shooting. Dan O'Bannon's reaction to this is to curse Jesus in response, and William then goes on to continue of how the actual injury happened. So he was walking into what was at the time parallel to the ground, the lift of one of the trucks that they were around. Not seeing it because of it being parallel with the ground, he walked right into it to receive his injury. So then Dan O'Bannon then points out the atomic cannon, as he calls it. William Stout then mentions how it is a miniature shot and that the atomic bullet is being loaded. He mentioned as the atomic bullet is being loaded, he mentions how it's stop motion animation, finishing off the sequence by accentuating the firing of the cannon with the word boom. He then mentions the name of Fantasy 2 as the company that did the miniatures. So that's what we got there. So yeah.
I did love the miniature work. Like, yeah, when like looking back after you pointed the trees, I'm like, yeah, they're kind of static like in a kid's cartoon show, but
Exactly,
overall, if you're not looking at the trees, it was a good shot.
I think also that the altering the sky also doesn't quite match the previous shot where we again, if we didn't see the exterior outside of the cabin that Jefferson is in, it probably would have worked out a little better not being able to. But the fact that you see this realistic looking sky off in the distance over the mountains, and then we see this shot of not quite matching up, it sort of throws off the illusion a little bit.
Yeah, especially for nerds like us who look at it minute by minute.
Exactly. Again, when you examine a movie at this pace, yes, definitely. It is definitely that is a major problem with that. All right, so that's going to bring us to the according to the script, where we're dealing with a story and screenplay by Dan O'Bannon. We're dealing with a revision from October of 1983. And this is based on a story and screenplay by John Russo, Rudy Rickey, and Russell Steiner. Interior, railway car, dawn. Close, a telephone, beeping. A hand picks up the phone. The hand belongs to 22-year-old U.S. Army gunnery sergeant. Behind him, through the window of the railway car, we can see the dawn breaking through some trees. Sergeant into the phone. Hello, good morning. Yes, sir. Good morning to you too, sir. What's that you say, sir? Pauses. He gets nervous. Real alert, sir? Not a test? Yes, sir. All right, sir. Whatever you say, sir. You just give me the codes number, sir. Listening, writes it down. Archimedes-Hotdog-Rhubarb, 9er, 0, 9er. Gotcha, sir. The sergeant looks up the day's code book. Cut to exterior railway car in the country, dawn. We now see the vehicle the sergeant is sitting in. It is a little cab on the end of a long flat railway car, sitting on a quiet spur out in the middle of nowhere, in a forest of low shrub pines. On the bed of the flat car is a huge cannon, a 150 millimeter howitzer. Radio voice voiceover. Bearing mark 220. Sergeant's voice. Bearing 220. Close of Sergeant's hand, dialing the numbers into the howitzer's mini computer. Angle, cannon. It swivels around, rotating from one compass point to another, on giant purring gimbals. Radio voice. Voiceover. Range, 34 miles. Sergeant's voice. Range, 34 miles. The long muzzle slowly drops until it reaches the desired arc at the horizon. Close. The computer screen. The words locked flashes with a beep. Interior, breech of cannon. A large artillery shell bearing a red and yellow radiation symbol rolls into the breech and is chambered. Cling, clang, clunk. Exterior, cannon, dawn. Sergeant's voice. Voiceover continues. Already here, sir. Radio voice voiceover. Fire. Whomp. The giant cannon kicks a belching flames, rocking the A railroad car back on its springs. Cut to. Cut to. Exterior, cemetery, dawn, no rain. Corpses, including Dee Dee, raise their dead eyes towards the dawn light, instinctively turning towards the whistling of the shell. Cut to. Exterior, street, adjoining cemetery, dawn, no rain. Frank stands next to the payphone, shading his eyes to look into the sky. Behind him, a taxi cruises up in the wet street. Cut to interior, mortuary, attic, crawlway, dawn, no rain. A little light seeps in from outside, revealing Tina and Ernie backed up as far as they can get. Bang! The hatch is knocked open, and Freddy sticks his scarred face up into the crawl space. Freddy, Tina? Cut to interior, basement, warehouse, dawn, no rain. Bert, Meat, Casey, and Chuck crouch by the phone. Bert, listen, do you hear something? And that's where we have this version of what happens in the movie. So yeah. So we're going to go on to the work print comparison. So where we film your entire movie, you culminate all the footage that you shot together and you pile it into one giant movie. You then take that, edit it down to your final version. Whereas, for example, in the final print, we are dealing with minutes 85 to 86. In the work print, we are dealing with minute 105 and 36 seconds to 106 and 38 seconds. So to begin with, this particular minute runs pretty parallel to the whole entire Sergeant Jefferson sequence up until the point where the gun starts to be put into position. We get an actual distinct voiceover that is obviously not the final version. Speaking out the directions as we have a slightly longer shot of the cannon moving for the first time. However, the internal animation is slightly different, as it starts to load the bullets of like the beginning as it's picked up, and then we suddenly cut to it actually being loaded into the cannon itself, which we don't actually get in the final version. And we overhear the voiceover of the sergeant saying everything is okay, like we do in the script, and then the firing also, which again is also in the script. But we then cut to the model shot of the city, which we actually see in the next minute. It then cuts to a shot of the cemetery of Trash and the other zombies, but it's not a frozen shot. They're all looking upwards and their heads turn to follow what is obviously the trajectory of the weapon that's being launched upon them. It then cuts to the crawl space sequence where the door flies completely open, and again, it's not another frozen shot as well. The door falls completely open, and we even get a brief glimpse of it knocking the 2x4 out of the way as well. So Freddy is there, and he calls out to Tina, and the two of them, Tina and Ernie, are cowering in the back, and Ernie still has the gun on Tina. And then we cut to the shot of Bert asking, listen, do you hear anything? And that's where we catch up with the movie. So the way they shot it more closely parallels the actual script version of it. So
I do like that they changed the zombies looking up from following the missile, because I imagine their heads just panning left to right, for example, which doesn't make sense since the missile's coming towards them.
Yeah.
Or because I don't think them craning their heads higher would look as good, but the stationary shot just staring is a lot more haunting. So like just because what I'm imagining in my head, I feel like what they went with makes more sense to me, or has a better effect.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, definitely. I mean, I think starting off with the Bert sequence is definitely the better way to start it, and then every single sequence after that is a frozen shot, which is more impactful than what they had originally scripted. So yeah. And again, like I said in the script, Frank is still around, but he's as we know, Frank no longer exists in the final version, thanks to James Cameron's way of like, no, I don't want to be out in the rain, so how about we do this?
Yeah, he was feeling a little cold and needed to be warmed up a bit. So.
Exactly, yeah. We'll see what has happened in the script version of it, if anyone is not aware, that Frank's character has basically made his way out of the funeral home and is now attempting to get a taxi back to his wife. So,
right.
so
Furthering the outbreak.
yeah, exactly. Mind you, as this atomic weapon has been launched, it's going to be as we find out in the next minute how fruitless that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's hard to outrun a nuclear fallout.
exactly. Yeah.
Unless you have a horse, then you can with
Yeah,
recent media.
or you put yourself inside of a lead fridge.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah, exactly. Kids, don't do that
Yeah,
because those fridges actually were only able to be opened from the outside. There was no internal mechanism to open them. They actually, when the door closed, it actually locked sealed because that's what it was. It wasn't like our normal fridge where just air pressure keeps everything shut. No, those old lead-lined ones were actually like solid locking safes when you had that door closed. You could not pry that door open from the outside, let alone the inside. So, yeah. All right. So that being said, now that we've torn apart a Spielberg story and all that,
Oh yeah, but I was just gonna make some lead paint jokes, but I'm like, nah, I think we're
yeah,
good.
we'll leave that. All right. So, do you got anything else you want to add to this particular minute there, Mr. Mitch, as we're wrapping this up?
No, I think I've done enough foreshadowing and plot devices for one
Excellent.
podcast.
All right. So on that note, I want to thank you once again, Mitch, for all of the time and insight that you've brought to this podcast. I've really enjoyed. I mean, we've been buddies for a while and all that sort of thing. We always like talking about movies, but I really welcomed your insight to this particular movie and just parallel the world around it, which is kind of nice to do. I thank you for the time that you've put into this podcast, and like I've said to everyone else of my regulars, that I really appreciate from the bottom of my heart you helping me out this project. It's made it quite an enjoyable time for myself.
For sure. I've had a lot of fun going to the minutes and reliving this film. I did on like a rewatch of the entire film when we first started the project, and then coming back and seeing these clips, and I'm like, how did I miss that in my first watch? It's very satisfying.
There is so much that, like, as I'm talking, like, oh, I missed that. Oh crap. Well, that might be a future project where we might get a couple of talking heads to just sit down and do our own commentary track while watching the movie. So.
That'd be fun.
All right. So that being said, thank you once again, Mitch. Thank you, audience, for joining me for this roller coaster ride. We were about to pull into the final station after the last couple of bumps to our ride. And I got nothing else to say except see you next Wednesday.
You've just been listening to a Planet Geek production of Do You Want to Party? A Movies by Minute podcast of the 1985 The Return of the Living Dead. Please be sure to subscribe, download, comment, share, rate, and review. Be sure to follow us on our social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Tumblr, or Letterboxd. Search for Planet Geek Productions. X, former Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Search for Planet Geek Pod. Or send us an email to planetgeekpod@gmail.com. Our closing music is provided by Night Chill. See the show notes for more details. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and farewell, fiends.
Oops, I've lost my cursor. There I am there. And now I've lost my place because I moved the page. All right. So that being said, we're going to move on to our final sequence, which I cannot find my work. Where's my work? There's my work. Oh, Okay, I'm going to work this out. This, again, was an experiment to do it this way, but let's see.